All right, guys. So our next topic here, and speaking of Spider-Man, as we were just talking about there with the loosely with the Blue Beetle story, we did get some actual Tom Holland Spider-Man news and a couple of different things. One, we did finally get the title for the upcoming Spider-Man film, and it's going to be called No Way Home, which is a fine title. They did the thing where like Zendaya and then what's his name? Guy who plays Ned, Jacob Bartolone, I think, something like that. And then Tom Holland, they all posted these fake, like they posted three different titles prior to this one actually coming out. It was what, Home Slice, Home Wrecker.
Home Wrecker,
What was the other one?
and No Place Like Home.
Yeah, Phone Home. Phone Home.
Phone
Yeah,
Home, sorry. Phone Home.
that was it. So then I think the next day or later on in the day, we got the official title of No Way Home. Then I think shortly after that, we got word that Tom Holland had done like an interview somewhere, and he confirmed that this No Way Home. I already forget what it is. Yeah, No Way Home is going to be his last Spider-Man movie that he has on his contract. So he could always re-up and get a new contract to be in more. But as of No Way Home, Spider-Man's a free agent essentially. Like Tom Holland is not technically speaking signed up to be Spider-Man going forward. So I have a feeling they were more than likely re-up the contract because I think even Tom Holland goes on to say that like because he was questioned about the whole kind of fiasco that happened when Disney and Sony had a little bit of a falling out prior to was it Far From Home I think being made where like the deal was over and there was no more Spider-Man in the MCU and everyone was freaking out and crying and whatever. He said that that's pretty much been ramped up and that situation shouldn't happen again. That both the studios are like they have a deal in place that they're both happy with and they want to continue working it. This is also Tom Holland, an actor who doesn't know anything about the actual business side of things, and he goes on to say that as well. But it is a little bit reassuring to know that okay, well maybe they do have everything sorted and they're not going to have this fiasco every year where we lose Spider-Man in the MCU and then he's back and blah 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 blah. So, John, you hear these things, the new title for Spider-Man No Way Home and Tom Holland not his contract expiring after this. What are your thoughts on here? You think he's coming back? Do you like the title?
I'll start with the title. The title's fine. To be honest, the titles for these movies, I've enjoyed the movies immensely. I love the movies. I think Tom Holland does a great job as Spider-Man. So let this in no way color color what you think I think about these movies. I love the movies. I thought the titles all along were just kind of whatever. They're
Mhm.
very on the nose. I mean, Homecoming, and literally there was a Homecoming. Now I understand it was Spider-Man coming back to the Marvel universe proper, and the idea, the play on Homecoming. Far From Home, he literally was far from home. I guess there was some subtext there with he felt far from home because he had been in space or because he didn't have Tony around anymore. I'm guessing that's what the subtext of that was supposed to be. It was kind of a stretch to get there for me as far as the naming went. So this is fine. No Way Home. I who knows what this kind of implication means. Um,
I feel like
I
the
assume
names are kind of gimmicky, and like I grew tired of them after we heard "Far From Home" was the title because I just don't. The titles are meaningless. Like the
sure.
title is not going to make the movie good. It's not going to make the movie bad. Like I totally get that.
Well,
It's just annoying. Like I
and they
just
kind
it's
of
kind of lame.
yeah,
This is a lame title, but
they kind of and they kind of back themselves in the somebody was real clever and came up with the title Spider-Man Homecoming
mhm.
about the movie that had dealt with the homecoming and with Spider-Man coming back to the MCU. So that was a very clever title. I'll give them
Yeah, that
credit,
one was
and
good.
it
I
worked
liked
really
that
well
one.
for that
Mhm.
first movie. But it kind of backed them into the corner of then they're having to create these kind of subtitles for every future Spider-Man movie. I always thought it would have been cool to have, you know, do what they did with Batman and use the other things, the other names that he's gone by. So, Spectacular Spider-Man
Yeah,
or,
that's what
The
I always
Amazing
wanted.
Spider-Man.
I wanted it to
I thought
go
that would have
like
been cool.
amazing, spectacular, and then ultimate. That's the trilogy.
Ultimate, yeah.
Yeah, like, that would
Yep,
that'd
that
just
would've been
be it.
cool.
I always wanted them to do that, like, because I
Yeah,
thought that's what they were doing with, Andrew Garfield, but then it was just, "Oh, no, it's just 2." You know? Maybe
yeah,
Spider-Man 1,
yeah.
maybe Spider-Man 2, but whatever.
Yeah, so I think they kinda backed themselves in the corner as far as naming went, and so who knows, obviously, if you wanna take the other ones have had a literal implication, so Far From Home, so, I mean, does Spidey go to space on this? I mean, we've talked about the multiverse possible implications is the fact that he's going to literally other universes possibly mean that he's going to be exceptionally far from home? I mean, there's got to be some literal component, and then there's going to be some textual subtextual component to it too, about the whatever the theme behind the movie. So anyway, this title's fine. They did get me with the troll job. I was all excited when I saw Tom Holland's post. I was like, phone home. Wow, that's, I mean, ET. Why would they give a direct
Right.
reference to ET? Are there going to be aliens? Does this tie into the scroll somehow with Marvel's upcoming, Secret Invasion? Like, whoa, what's going on? And then within an hour, you were found out they were just trolling you. So it was fun. They got me. Good job. As far as Holland leaving or his contract being up, um, I think we talked about this when the news first broke. I think we had Discord back and forth about it. I don't see any way he doesn't come back. First of all, he has pretty universal acclaim for the way he plays Peter Parker. Nobody's like, "Get that kid out of there, he's terrible." No, people like him, and if anything, he's set to pop off even more with Uncharted coming out and some of his other movies work coming out. So,
Mhm.
I don't think Marvel or Sony are eager to get rid of him. Um, and I think he honestly likes playing the character. I mean, everything we heard when the Marvel and Disney and Sony deal to use Spider-Man fell through, everything we heard was that Tom Holland was one of the key players in getting that back on the table by going to, his boss at Sony and saying, "Hey, look, I think this really needs to happen. I think this is what the fans want. This is what I want." And I think that he had some influence there. So I don't see any reason why he wouldn't come back. It was interesting. There was a quote that I just saw right before the show that said that apparently somebody asked Robert Downey Jr. about him leaving, and he said, "Look, Tom Holland's not going to play Spider-Man when he's 37, so he's going to leave eventually." So I think that's true. I think that's something to also keep in mind. Holland, Spider-Man, unless they want to do what they've done in the comic books and have him be a adult with a family or possibly a family or in job problems and stuff, then he by nature a character that you find a way to bring in a younger actor to portray eventually. And
Mhm.
so maybe Holland does another 2 or 3 films. The one thing that strikes me really odd about this coming out now is that Sony and Marvel did make this agreement to allow to allow Marvel to produce this movie, which is still set in the MCU. However, we haven't gotten another Spider-Man appearance in another MCU property movie. So we haven't gotten a Spider-Man in the new Avengers, or we don't have confirmation that he's in Doctor Strange or any of these upcoming films. And I would think that Marvel, obviously they want to be in the Spider-Man business and they'd be happy to produce Spider-Man movies, but I think they would also want, in any kind of deal, they would have wanted some agreement that he would come back and play Spider-Man in a future film for them as well. So this is interesting timing. The implications are odd to me on this.
The other thing that's, interesting too about because yeah, I agree, I don't think there's any way he wouldn't come back. He has I mean, he said that he loves playing them, and he'd more than happily come back to do it, so he kinda put the ball in, like, Sony and Marvel's court as far as bringing him back or not, because it's up, he said he'd come back, so now they just gotta offer him a new contract. So, I don't see why they wouldn't do that, especially with them well, with the rumored kind of intermingling of the Sony Spider-Verse and MCU, is we had, our boy Michael Keaton as Vulture show up at the end of that Morbius trailer with the mural of Spider-Man, kind of suggesting that a Spider-Man is going to be showing up in, the Sony verse of it all at some point. If not Tom Holland, maybe someone else, who knows? I would, to your point, I would actually really enjoy, like, since they got Tom Holland in at, like, a good time and people like him, and he looks like a teenager even though he's not. I mean, he's, like, 24 or something. Still a young guy, but not all that much younger than me by any means, so either way, far more successful than I am, so props to you. Um, I would like to see them actually do the thing where he grows up and, like, continues on, because like, obviously, I like the Peter Parker, like, teenager and college student and all that stuff too, but, like, it's one of the things that a lot of these, like, revival shows have going for them is that they come back, or like Lizzie McGuire was gonna come back, for instance, it ended up not, but either way, Lizzie McGuire did a little teenage show, and then 10, 15 years later, they were gonna bring it back, but it was gonna be, Lizzie McGuire going through stuff at this age now. So, and the
Yeah,
unique thing with that
like
is,
they've done with Full House,
yeah, and the audience has
the
grown up
full the
with them.
Fuller House,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of the thing. Like, you get to see them experiencing new things, but you're also at a place in your life where you're going through the same thing. Like you were then when you were in high school, and that's all great. But I mean, kind of like me right now. I'm kinda more partial to, like, a 30, 40-year-old Spider-Man who kinda has his head on straight, like, I would like to see that, especially considering it really hasn't been done on the screen. So they kinda
Mhm.
would be in a really good spot to have Tom, like, continue playing it for another, 3 movies, that'll be another 6 years, so he would be about in his 30s by the end of it, and you just have a nice, evolution of the Peter Parker character, in, like, this world. Then hell, he could keep going if he wanted to. I mean, it's kinda like RDJ said, like, it's just totally up to him, like, doesn't think he's gonna be playing Spider-Man when he's 37, but he was playing Iron Man in his 50s, so, I mean, you never know.
It's true.
Like, you never
It's
know.
very
But
true.
I would like to see that for sure. I think it'd be a cool thing, and then you just again, you have the benefit of all the kids growing up with his Peter Parker. So if he's still playing Peter Parker in 10 years, they can tell more adult Spider-Man stories because their core audience has grown up with him. It's just
Yeah.
something you don't always get a chance to do, so when you can, I like that.
It's it's an interesting dilemma, I think that Marvel and Sony are in with the character when you talk about aging him up. I'm with you. I think that, seeing an older Spider-Man, a statesman for the Marvel universe, so to speak,
Right.
is a cool idea. And you see how popular older characters are. You look at things like the movie Logan, which is loosely, or at least inspired by the comic book storyline Old Man Logan, which deals with a an older Wolverine who's at the end of his life, and you think, look at, the classic The Dark Knight Returns Batman storyline, which is
Mhm.
Batman as a senior citizen, coming back to don the cowl again and try and clean up Gotham one more time. These stories with the characters, aged up, have a lot of appeal. A lot of people are really interested to see, what would an old Spider-Man, I say old, but what would an older Spider-Man look like? I mean, theoretically, you could have Tom Holland play Spider-Man, you know, over the course of his entire life if he wanted to, and
Mhm.
get some of those older stories. Um,
Well, and we
but the
saw
flip
the
side,
older Peter in, Spider-Verse too. And I
exactly.
thought it worked really well. So that's
Yeah.
kinda why I think it, because then you could bring in, like, another younger one and have him mentor him, or bring in Miles or something, but yeah.
Well, and that was where I was gonna say, that's where the dilemma comes in, is they also want characters that young people, young audience members can relate to. And I think right now,
Mhm.
the MCU, for the most part, even since the beginning, has kind of skewed towards older characters. I mean, Spidey was the first really young character brought into the MCU that really gave, like, you know, teenagers and even young kids kind of their way into the movies, besides them, but it gave them a way to see themselves in the movies, besides, just liking them and enjoying them as, for what they were.
Mhm.
So, when you do age Spider-Man up like that, how do you then give young people their way into the movies? Now, the more MCU we've got the Kamala Khan series coming. There's hints. We've got what's Haley Steinfeld is playing Kate Bishop
Mhm.
in the Hawkeye series. So they're starting to bring in some young actors, some younger characters into the MCU. So maybe that's their way in. And if it is and it works, then maybe they can let Spider-Man, grow old.
Yeah, for sure. I would it's just something too, like I said, that is even when you had Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in there, who did not look as young as our boy Tom Holland does. So it was kind of like you had to just accept it. Like, yeah, sure, Tobey Maguire's in high school. Okay. Like at least with Andrew Garfield, they said he was in college. So it was like, okay, that
Yeah.
works. Like I can deal with that. But like they were at an age where they could have just aged him up a little bit, like they did with Andrew, like, making him in college is fine, and he was a little bit more adult, but he was also kinda like he was cool Peter Parker because he was, like, skateboarding and stuff, he wasn't
Yeah.
nerdy Peter Parker. Like, somewhere in the middle of, like, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, there's a really good Spider-Man there. Like, a really good Peter Parker and Spider-Man, like, all one because I liked Toby did a better, like, not better, but, like, a more true
Classic.
Peter, yeah, more classic Peter, but then, uh, Garfield did a much more true Spider-Man. Like, he was quippy,
Yeah.
he toyed with people, he was always cracking jokes, like, that was good stuff. I really liked Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. Underrated. Second movie sucked, but we got Jamie Foxx coming back, so, I mean, who knows? Like, who the hell knows? What do you think's gonna happen here? We'll wrap this one up with, the whole if the contract does get renewed, do you think they have this thing worked out to where, like, he's gonna show up in Morbius or Venom, like, 3 or something, maybe Morbius 2, maybe the post-credit scene is freaking Peter Parker or something? What do you think
I
about that?
I think that's all on Sony. I think Marvel would be happy to continue using Spider-Man in their movies and also producing the Spider-Man movies. Um, and if they'd probably be fine with them say with Sony like bringing him into their movie, like the Venom movies and stuff. But I just I think Sony's maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll get a definitive answer in Morbius because obviously there's the poster of Spider-Man in the background of the one scene. Um, so maybe they'll give us a definitive answer sooner rather than later. Maybe Venom 2 will bring us an answer. But I think Sony's probably having internal discussions right now about should we just hire our own Spider-Man? Should we let the Tom Holland Spider-Man be the MCU Spider-Man and let Marvel produce those movies and take our piece of those movies and be done with it? Or should we try and figure out how to work Tom Holland Spider-Man into our Venom verse, for
Mhm.
lack of a better way to put it? Um, I personally think they should work Spider-Man. They should just hire a new Spider-Man and have 2 Spider-Man on the screen at the same time. Audiences are smart. They'll figure it out. They'll figure out that Tom Holland is the MCU Spider-Man and that there's another Spider-Man and another, you know,
Well, they could
maybe
just make it
Doctor.
Miles.
Yeah, my thing about Miles was I was thinking that if MCU decides to one day retire Tom Holland's Spider-Man that Miles would be the obvious replacement, for that universe, but you're right, they could Sony could beat them to it and bring Miles in the Sony, which would then make more sense because it would be a different universe, and that's kind of from the comic origins. Miles
Mhm.
came from a different universe, so yeah, that would work too,
Well, they
yeah.
could even if they really wanted to, like, they can have it to where it's a shared thing and, like, Tom Holland's Peter Parker meets and kinda it puts him under his wing kinda thing, but then, like, that's it. Kinda like Iron Man and
Yeah,
Peter, but a very similar thing with Peter and Miles. just to have it kind of set up so like you understand where Miles was able to come in and how he became Spider-Man because Peter's already there. Because you could totally do it without Peter being involved. I just think you miss out on something that you could just easily do, and then you have a better explanation as to why Peter's not over here with Venom and stuff. Because it's like, well, he's just letting Miles handle all that stuff, like,
Yeah.
he's being an Avenger, and Miles is watching the streets nowadays, like, that's just kinda you kinda
Yep.
get that out of it. So, I don't know, they could do that. In the end, I probably would just like to see him just it's Sony's character, if they wanna bring him into Venom, then let 'em bring him into Venom, like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I could see Marvel not wanting a second Spider-Man because it's like, well, we got this Spider-Man. Like, it's kinda like why
Sure.
you would never why Warner Brothers never wanted there to be a Batman on TV because, it's just it lessens the value of your Batman that you have on the movie screen when it's like,
In the
well,
theater.
there's another one here, like, yeah. But they don't
Yeah.
seem to give a shit about that with Superman, which is weird, but I don't know. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah, but again, we're going to a different company that has no idea what they're doing most of the time anyway. So uh,
This
I think Marvel's
is
got
true.
their ducks a little more in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, guys, question is, what do you think about this? Are you fine with the No Way Home title? Are you kind of like me, where like you're fine with it, but the little home things is getting a little tired. Let's put it that way. Like, I would have been fine with them not doing the home thing. Doesn't they don't need to have what if they make a fourth, fifth, and sixth one, they're gonna keep having to throw home in there. Like, it's just getting kind of tired. All right. And it's just a little bit much. I know it's a title, it doesn't mean anything, but nevertheless. And what do you think about Tom Holland's contract expiring? Do you think he's gonna be coming back? Do you think it's a sure thing? Do you think he'll actually pop up in the Sony, Venomverse with Morbius and all that? Let us know down in the comment section below.